Well, I wanted to thank you for taking time to speak with me today.
I appreciate you asking to do so. This is all still actually pretty new to me. I've been in a bunch of bands, as everybody else in Stygian Mind, but this is actually the first time I've been on a recording that's actually been this highly circulated. Like everybody's getting it. I mean, we were getting requests on for various things for people in Poland and
Sure.
in many other countries. This is just it's still surreal to me just trying to, oh, we're getting that kind of attention.
Sure. And I've read quite a few of your European reviews, and they're all great.
No, I didn't. I mean, I'm trying not to. I'm also an illustrator. I've done comic work, so
Mhm.
I'm sort of aware of being able to separate myself from the work. Like you put things out, and it's supposed to stand out on its own. You know, people are going to feel how they're going to feel, and you just hope that there's more of them that like than don't.
Sure.
And especially with music, which is extraordinarily subjective. So what we do, we like to think is pretty straightforward heavy metal, but all of us have our sort of hats in various other things. But ultimately, what we are is a heavy metal band, and not everybody's going to like the flavor of what we do, but there's still a pretty big audience for this
Absolutely.
kind of sound. You know,
And I love the name of the band. Who came up with the name for the band?
that is a funny story. We originally started out as something extraordinarily basic. Like we were just coming up with placeholder names, and Monochord was the name that we started out with. So everything was sort of under that name, but we were kind of deciding, okay, we need to come up with something. And we were going back and forth with things. And Shane, the guitarist, we were, we were trying to come up with something to sort of indicate something, foreboding, dark. And
Mhm.
he breaks out the old thesaurus, and Stygian comes up, and suddenly we're riffing off of it, and Stygian Mind just happens to stick. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, that's the sort of name that I would have come up with on my own, given enough time. That's my sort of thing. But that's what made it funny. Is like Shane, okay, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
How?
yeah, that was the origin of it. And we were,
Mhm.
and of course, you know as well as anybody, the biggest problem with anybody trying to start anything right now is that all the names seem taken. Like everybody's
Sure.
done, there's some variation of this or that, but most of the names are done. So you're hoping that what you do isn't exactly the same as somebody else. I mean, the band that I was in previously was Brewhammer, and we didn't think there was another band name with that name until we went on YouTube. It was like, oh,
Yeah,
so
sure.
you kind of screwed, but Stygian Mind stuck. It's what we're happy with, so it's what we're happy to be.
And I wanted to ask you if you could take me back to the beginning. How did this all become a reality?
Okay, a little background is in order. So Shane and I, Shane the guitarist, have known each other for way too many years, like over 30. And when we first met, I was involved in a band called Sealed Fate, which was uh, a pretty underground band in Maryland at the time. And Shane played for us for a while there before breaking off and doing his own thing. But we've known each other and our friendship has been pretty strong from that point on. And we had done another band about 20 years ago, I would say, called Our Arcanist. And one of the songs from the album Iconoclast is from that time frame.
Wow.
Yeah, so what essentially happened about 2 years ago is Shane had this idea. Shane is always in the middle of, there's this idea. If he wants to do something, he'll go and record shit and grab a bunch of people, and suddenly a thing will happen. And that's essentially what happened here. He had an idea. He wanted it, and if he got me involved, he kind of wanted to work a little more with some of the stuff that we hadn't finished doing stuff with, and Iconoclast was one of them. But it wasn't, we didn't want this to be a rehash. We didn't want this to be the same thing. Iconoclast is the only thing that's kind of stayed intact, but he contacted me after he got in contact with Kurt and Ray, the drummer and the bassist respectively, and we wanted to, basically he wanted to kind of get a feel for how all of us felt. His thing is he wanted to have you know, people that he could count on to basically be,
Sure.
able to do things. He had played with each of the people involved before. Like he had been in bands with them, he had done various shows with them in the past. So he wanted them to be people that he knew, and he wanted them to be people that would be reliable to show up and do the work. And we got into practice the first day. We started working on Iconoclast, and we started working on what would become Crown of Bullets. That was the music he had already had for that, and I had had the song written like lyrically a while before.
Wow.
I had had it actually set up for Brewhammer when I was still in New York. And when all of that, when I ended up moving back and when this came about, it seemed I'm listening to the rhythm, I'm kind of going over the lyrics like, yeah, we can make this work. So that became Crown, and we started out doing that. We had built up what was going to be built to fail at the time. We came up with the covers, uh, because during shows we also do uh, Judas Priest Rapid Fire,
Ah,
and we also do Iron Maiden's Flight of Icarus. Those are live things. We have a couple of others that we're working on, but that's down the road. So we know that we have those in the pocket if we have the other material. Most of what's going to happen on the release show is going to be from the CD, obviously, but it's always nice to have other stuff in the pocket.
sure. Absolutely.
But as far as that's essentially where it started. There was the four of us initially just trying to figure out where everybody fit. Um, and it came together pretty quickly. I mean, once everybody had gotten a sense for where their place was going to be and everything. Shane knew the material. I knew, I knew Iconoclast. Obviously, we were practicing Crown, and Matt came later. Like we were already in the middle of doing shows. Like we had done about 3 or 4 shows before Matt had showed up at the last of those shows, and we were looking for another guitarist at the time. Matt and Shane had been playing in Deceased,
Ah,
and that's how they knew each other. And since Shane is the guitarist, he obviously wants to have people, somebody that he can sort of be
sure.
simpatico with, somebody that the sound is going to mesh with. And we tried with the guitarist and never really quite sync together. And with Matt, it was natural. He knew what Matt could do, and it wasn't a situation we were contemplating it, but Matt was interested. So he came to us and it just kind of happened.
That's great.
So after that, it was, getting Matt in the practices. He caught on to the material quick, and we were a band.
And one of the things I love about the album is the flow. But in that flow, Revenant was a song that really stood out for me. I wanted to ask if you could speak on that song.
What I love about Revenant is two important things. One, the riff, like the main riff as it comes in and goes out. That was something that we were kind of hanging on. Like we hadn't quite put everything together so far as how the song would go. It was one of the last things we had finished up in the studio. But that main riff was something that we introed shows with initially. We liked it
Ah,
so much. And it was something that everybody could just jump into. Like once you learned that kind of stuck in your head. It wasn't horribly difficult, but it was really fucking heavy. And lyrically, I like to focus on lots of dark materials, so this is about, all of these things that are constantly just rising up just when you think they're gone, all the stuff
mhm,
that you have regarding racism and just all of these issues that we're constantly dealing with that keep
sure,
coming back to the fore that you think are gone but are just lying under the surface.
sure, absolutely.
And that's what Revenant is about. It what it what everything else had been sort of written like Shane had been mapping out stuff for the actual song for a while, and we would practice it here and there. But as with everything, we were focusing on so many other songs. We were working on Built to Fail at the time. We were working on April Fools. We were working on like so many other songs were coming in. But when we came back to Revenant, got in the studio, and it was one of those situations where it all just kind of came together. It was,
Mhm.
and this was an example of where Matt actually comes in, I think, really, really strongly because when we're getting everything in, like we get the rhythms down, and suddenly everybody have to start making the decisions on their leads. Matt knew
Mhm.
what he wanted to do for leads, in most of the song, like all the middle section stuff where Shane and Matt are trading back and forth. They pretty much know what they're doing there. The end lead is not mapped out though.
Wow.
So what's happening there is that outro riff is obviously there, and
Mhm.
the really heavy, like, just chugging riff that Shane does at the end, it leads out into the lead that he does, and that note that's hanging, the lead that comes out after that is Matt, and that was literally something that Shane said, just put something down.
Wow.
So he improvised that, and the outro rhythm, the outro harmony that comes out is also improvised. It's something that Shane was thinking about as he was playing. So it's like, so how are we? Because the question we constantly had, because it's a long song, is okay. Well, we know that the riff is going to die out eventually. We're figuring it was just going to, outro slowly, but how do we actually end it? And when we got that when he came up with that harmony, I was like, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
And and that's a lot of a testament to the chemistry that you guys apparently have because
Exactly.
you can hear the chemistry throughout. And I remember a long time ago reading an interview with Robert Plant. And
Hmm.
he said when he was asked to come in to sing for the first time, he sat down with the three other guys. It's just like they just it's like they were talking but not talking with each other.
Yeah, and I don't think there was a point where I ever thought to myself that there's never a point where you're thinking, well, this needs to happen or we need to have this conversation. That was never the case. It was, we came in and somebody would come up with an idea, somebody would come up with a riff, and you would build.
Mhm.
It's a process of building, and it comes naturally enough for us that this is who we are, and it's funny because everybody comes from slightly different backgrounds. My background, as you can probably hear in the singing, is definitely more from your 80s, pretty strong metal
Mhm.
thrash,
Yes.
even a bit of progressive. I'm a gargantuan fan of Fates Warning, so Ray Alder, John Arch, Jeff Tate, all of those things, as well as Halford Dickinson and the like. Um, Shane is definitely metal. There's a bit of death in there because of the stuff he does with Deceased, but there's also punk. There's, he's a gargantuan fan of Voivod, and that will sneak its way in from time to time. Matt's a bit more thrash, and basically the rhythm section entirely, Ray and Kurt are local uh, punk musicians. Like they
Mhm.
play in a bunch of other bands that do punk and other experimental stuff as well. So there's just this interesting little synergy of different sounds that are all playing a part in what's going on.
And I wanted to ask you, upon listening to the album, I wanted to ask you the last two tracks were why
Oh,
were
Fear
they
Machine 1
sep
and 2. Yeah, yeah.
yes. Why were they separated one? And was that a working title before the songs, or was the title of the album after the songs?
Fear Machine, okay, remember I said that Iconoclast was something that we did from our Arkham stage.
Yes.
That song technically comes back to that same era as well, but we had never actually put vocals on it. Like Shane had basically
Mhm.
mapped out the music for it, and most of what's there is from that time. But when we decided to split it, because initially Welcome to the Machine, Fear Machine 1, is what we would actually do at shows. I
Mhm.
was still mapping out because Shane had basically decided to sort of rework that second part. Like there's the part that you hear at the very end,
Yes.
the outro bit is something that's always been there, but a lot of the stuff in between is stuff that was added. Like it, it's
Okay.
it was to answer your question. it was always assigned to be a whole song, but we had worked it so that the first section of it could be played on its own. Um, so lyrically, there were some things that I had worked out. I'm always writing lyrics for stuff, and I'd kind of go through initially looking at this was like, okay, this looks good for that. But Revenant, for instance, I wrote for the band, and Fear Machine 1 and 2 are also written for the band with a lot of the same themes. But it's designed as a whole. It's just that we're not a progressive band, so we're not really accustomed to sort of doing the
The
lengthy sweeps. So
transition.
we didn't have like the ridiculous time changes
Hmm.
or all the stuff that would be indicative of a song that's generally of that length. So just basically having sort of a dead end and then jump into the drum roll into the next bit worked perfectly for us. It was because when we were actually doing the final cuts of the recording, that was a question that we had. Should we just basically let that part die and go right into the next riff, or should we keep the roll? And the moment we heard both is like, no, that roll works.
Yeah,
That separates the two.
it definitely does.
So no, but it was always intended to be the two-parter that it is. It's just that they work well by themselves because when we initially played the first portion of it in shows, that stood on its own.
Sure.
So that's why it sounds like it can work either way. Like you can, if you just work from the drum roll on, Fear Machine 2 also works on its own, but together they are effectively a single song.
And I wanted to ask you, now that the album is out, what can fans look for next, my friend?
Well, we were sort of chatting briefly about that beforehand, but the plan is to move forward. We're doing the release show on June 26th. That's going to be in DC. And we're going to be focused on just hitting the road more, doing more shows. We have more bands that we're lining stuff up with, so hopefully more stuff in the summer, but definitely we already have stuff booked for the fall, but in the midst of all of that, we want to start working on new material. As you said, the album is
Mm,
done.
sure.
We've done our part there, so we can play the shows, we can do that, but we want to be moving forward. This is the first, and we want to see what's next. As I said, Matt has material, Shane has material. I've always got, stuff, to write and vocal ideas. They're always present. And there's always something to figure out how, once again, especially now that we have Matt as part of the
Mhm.
songwriting crew, to figure out how all of those sounds are going to work together. And I can't wait. That's my favorite part of the process is being in there, listening to the riff and seeing what I can come up with and how everything works together.
Sure.
It's just this wonderful synergy.
And what
That's what's next. What's next is more creating and more shows.
and and speaking of the live experience with the band, before you go on stage, do you have any exercises that you go through as a ritual before you go out and sing?
I Even actually before I go to practice, I will generally drink my share of tea with honey and lemon. I try to do vocal exercises. Like I'm usually doing all this stuff like on the road. Like I'm heading
Mm,
over to practice and I'll drink, I'll have the water with me because I want to stay hydrated while I'm singing. I don't want to have anything happen to the throat as I'm going, but well, as I'm going, I'll have something playing, and I try not to strain myself before practicing. I will
mm,
try to work enough that I can basically get my levels, kind of get a sense for where I'm feeling that day, but not to the point where I'm pushing too hard so that by the time I get in, I'm wearing myself out.
sure.
But that's probably the closest to a ritual that I come. The tea and the water are always part of the process. I'm always trying to be mindful and not overdo before the show. I also don't eat before
Ah,
before I actually do a show. I find that if I'm full, it generally tends to make things more difficult when I'm trying to
Mm.
enunciate and push out notes. It's those are just my quirks.
And how did your vocal journey start? At what age did you start singing?
13 years old is when I discovered Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance, Iron Maiden Number of the Beast, and Rush Moving Pictures. Those were the albums that pretty much got me into it. Halford especially, which is probably most prominent on the album, but has always been most prominent in my mind. Um, the moment I heard that album, I knew this was something that was gonna just be a part of me. And I discovered around that point, just like, hey, I can do this. That's the
Yes.
funny thing you discover at home. You're singing and all. It's like, oh, oh, this is a thing that's happening. Because I'd always sang, but I'd never tried doing that in particular. Like whatever you hear on the radio, in my house, there was a lot of R&B, but that also means that you also have a lot of falsetto being used with other vocalists, with your
Sure.
Hendrix, with Curtis Mayfield, with Marvin Gaye, just a whole bunch of different people that would basically, you know, create all of these different sounds using all these different parts of their voice. So by the time I get to this, it just kind of felt natural.
And speaking of R&B, one album that I thought was going to just destroy the whole industry didn't do well. My favorite performers were Levert, Sweat, and Gill, and they did two albums together, and I thought it'd just blow up, and
Hmm.
it never took off.
Who is this?
Levert, Sweat, and Gill did two albums together. It's called LSG.
I don't think I've heard that.
Definitely check out the first one. It's
Yeah,
amazing, top to bottom. I mean, you go through the album, it's like hit, 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 you know, and those guys had amazing careers, you know.
but
It,
how well do they work together, I guess is
it
the
was
question.
amazing,
No, well,
amazing.
no, I don't mean how do they sync musically. I mean
Yeah.
you're always wondering in that case, well, only two albums. What happened there? Was it
Well,
something between them? Was it between the record company? Was it
I think it's the illness of Levert. I wasn't sure though, but I imagine that's what it was because at the same time he fell ill for a while and was out for a
um
bit. And I think if I remember correctly, he had heart issue.
oh, that's
Yeah.
never
And so they kind of did solo things, the other guys did solo stuff during that time afterwards.
got you. No, I'll definitely check that out. I am aware of so many different types of music, so it's kind of difficult for me to keep track of everything that's
Sure.
going on in
Oh, I know,
music.
I know.
Yeah. But no, that definitely sounds like something I need to come back to.
And I wanted to ask you as well. Um, if you could speak on the album art, I'm gonna assume that you created it.
Yeah, yeah, it does say art by Joseph Silver. So I am an illustrator. At the same time that I was discovering Judas Priest, I was already drawing. I'd been drawing since I was 4, and I've been fortunate enough to do work in comics as an illustrator, as an inker mainly. But I do everything. I
Mm.
paint, I draw, I work in watercolor, and that album is actually all digital. Like that's
Wow.
literally me working primarily in Clip Studio. And I've experimented with a bunch of these. I mean, Photoshop is kind of the standard for a lot of
Mm.
people, but as a comic artist, Clip Paint was kind of made for me.
Right.
And once I discovered how to actually paint digitally, because that was me basically just all of the stuff you're seeing is me basically emulating oils. And once I figured out, oh wait, I can get a paint with here. Oh, and I can blend. And
Right.
the light just sort of hits. And once I had that, it was a long time building it because if I showed you what the whole thing looks like in all of its separate layers, there's so much going on. There's so many individual pieces that I had to basically set up and put together just so in order to make all of that work the way that it does. But That was definitely all me. It was definitely a lot of fun. The back cover was based on a conversation that Shane and I had because when he looked at the cover, he thought that it would be a good lark to basically, sort of do it as a video game. It's like, well, actually, that would be fun. Because I finished the cover and I'm thinking to myself, I did not intend this to look like an 80s metal cover, but it looks like an 80s
Sure. Yeah,
metal cover. And I,
it
I didn't,
does.
that was not a conscious act. I had a theme because Fear Machine is what we were going with. And I wanted to create this machine and I wanted to do the people. And that took lots of different forms before I decided on what I ended up with. But once we were done, it's like, yeah, that does look like it'd be the cover of a video game, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we came up with the idea of the cabinet. So I create the cabinet in the back. We put the bit from the cover on there, and suddenly it's like, yeah, yeah. Because we originally had the idea of doing tokens. We wanted to be able to do that and just start throwing them out to the audience. But
Ah,
you have to pay way too much money. Well, you have to pay a decent amount of money for a ridiculous amount of them that we would never get rid of.
sure.
And the last thing I think we wanted is to have just a bunch of fucking tokens just sitting around the house. I mean, not everybody in the neighborhood is going to know who we are. We're not going to just throw them out at people. What the hell is this? That's not going to work. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that. I'm looking forward to whatever experimental ideas we come up with next as far as doing stuff for the next cover. I also did because Crown of Bullets and Iconoclast were both singles that we had put out, and the artwork that you see there are also me, but that's not digital. That's actually pastel.
Wow.
So just constantly trying to find ways to make the art work in the band. That was sort of one of the other advantages of having the lineup that we do because everybody's able to do something. Like outside
Yeah,
of just being a member of the band and playing an instrument, like we all have skills. And it made this very much a pretty straightforward DIY project as much as anything else. And it just happens that we all happen to be aligned with lots of other people that we know in the area. Like being that we're all in and from bands, it made it
sure.
easier to network and get the attention of other people. And I have to give a shout out in this case to King Fowley of Deceased, who is largely responsible for getting stuff to the attention of other people. Hell's Headbangers for starters, but once he likes something that you do, he'll 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 go to the wall for you.
Hell's Headbangers has a location here in Ohio.
Does it now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
it's a where there's a warehouse there. And it's like a word of mouth thing. You go to a warehouse and you say, I want to see the albums. And there are what appears to be a limitless rows of just walls of thousands upon thousands of releases in there.
Yeah.
It's a candy store.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. That sounds insane. Yeah. No, but there's a there's just there's so much that I was happy about being able to do internally so far as just putting everything together. And none of this is actually possible without Mike Bozier from Oblivion Studios. Another person, once again, I've known Shane for over 30 years. I've known Mike about that long.
Hmm.
Like all of us go back to the local scene. Mike was in a band called Oblivion at the time. He's been in millions of bands since, and he still plays, he still records. Oblivion Studios is kind of a home away from home. When we decide we're going to go and do something, head over to Oblivion. Hey, Mike, want to fuck around with this idea? So get in the booth, start playing around, see what happens.
And speaking about walls of albums, what's the best way to get a copy of your album and any merchandise that you have?
Well, Bandcamp has pretty much the links to everything. So it has all the actual songs streamable that you can actually download the tracks themselves. The CDs are available there. The cassettes, we have limited cassettes, they're available there. Um, we even have like the stuff for the stuff that we were doing for the demo, like the demo still available. The t-shirts for that are still available. We're working on new shirts. So there's still a bunch of stuff that's in motion. Hell's Headbangers has a bunch of stuff on their website as well. Um, There's a bunch of ways to get it. If you want it, it's there. It's
Excellent.
available streaming on everything. Spotify has it. Apple has it. Amazon. Anywhere that you can actually stream your music. If you want your metal, you can get Stygian Mind.
Excellent. And lastly, my friend, I wanted to ask you if you could give a message to your fans, what message would you give them?
If you love what we do, I can't wait to show you what we're planning on doing next. I'm just overwhelmed and happy that we've gotten the response that we've gotten so far. Everybody that I've heard from has loved the music. Just seeing where this has gone and getting all the requests from everybody has shown me that I think we've tapped into something.
Absolutely. It's an album that I enjoyed from top to bottom. It's hard to just talk about a couple tracks. We could have done an entire episode just talking track by track. I love the band, the unity of the band, and the flow of the album is so great on this album. There must have been a lot of time spent in placing the songs in the order that they are because the flow is great.
We did spend a bit of time trying to figure that out. And a lot of that had to do with when stuff was recorded in the studio. Um, we had Crown of Bullets and Iconoclast pretty much recorded first. Like when we did the demo, it was those two in rapid fire. But when we started actually putting stuff together for the album, we were adding, and as we were adding, it became obvious that we couldn't just center everything around those two tracks. So when we got Dead Inside done, for instance, by the time I'd put on the vocals and we started putting all the accents and everything on, leads and everything, we pretty much decided that it had to be the starter. That had to be the opener.
Mhm.
Because it's, well, a friend of mine had given me the term to describe it. It's a notice of intent.
Yes,
This is basically telling the world, this is who we are, this is what we
right.
do. And it kind of just moves from there. We had played with a couple of different placings because I try to when I'm working on the lyrics as I'm putting everything to get it set up for the actual CD, I'm having to rearrange where stuff is going and I'm like, oh crap, we moved it from there. So I'm having to shift. And Revenant became sort of I think we just wanted to start out strong. Revenant was strong enough that by the time we were done, we wanted it to be early in the album. We didn't
Yeah,
want to have that pushed too far later. So it kind of became the situation where I wanted Crown early, but I didn't want it to be like the first or second song.
right.
So that was kind of one of those. We had Dead Inside, so then Crown Built to Fail worked its way in third because I think a lot of it was pretty much what we were talking about, trying to get movement. So
Sure.
wanted the whole album to sort of feel different each time you're going to a different track because obviously Dead Inside feels different from Revenant,
Oh,
feels different
absolutely.
from Built to Fail, and that was sort of the flow that we wanted it to have. And once we got to that point and we put in, you know, Crown of Bullets and Iconoclast, the rest kind of worked together. We knew that Fear Machine was going to close out the album, so it was just okay. April Fool's next, yeah. You get through all the epic stuff. You
Mm,
want something nice and short and punchy. Then you go to Last Echo Chamber, which has its own unique feel. It moves, but not in a way like anything else on the album. And then right to Fear Machine because
yeah,
that first song, the first part of that is punchy as fuck.
yeah,
Goes right to the pedal, and it's one of those things where you feel it, and that's where you want them, and going back to what you're saying. It moves in a way that keeps you interested throughout. And
absolutely.
by the time we got to the end, we listened to everything, from that, from that perspective of that lineup, and it's like, yeah, that's the album order. There's no reason to do that any other way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank you for taking time to speak with me. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
No, this was a lot of fun. This is my first. You're the first to come up with the interview, and I certainly appreciate it.
Well,
You've been a pleasure to talk to, and this is a lot of fun because we're always talking about metal amongst our friends.
sure,
This is just an extension of that because
absolutely. And
it's
I'm
us
sure we
having.
could have many, many conversations. Like, for example, when you talked about Priest and Maiden,
Oh yeah, oh
one of
yeah.
the things that one of the best shows I ever seen. I seen the is a Judas Priest, a Scream for Vengeance tour, and Iron Maiden opened up the is their Number of the Beast tour.
Wow. See, my first show was actually a few albums after that from Maiden. It was actually for Somewhere in Time.
Oh, okay.
I actually caught them at the Capitol Center back when there was a Capitol Center in Maryland here. It was Iron Maiden Somewhere in Time with Yngwie Malmsteen opening.
Wow.
Yeah, that was from Trilogy to give you an idea.
Yeah.
Um, and I did eventually see Priest. It was a bit later than wow, Screaming for Vengeance. I to be a fly on the wall with that show. Man,
Oh, it's
that must have been
amazing.
incredible. Um, but no, I saw Priest for Painkiller actually. They were doing, what was it, Operation Rock and Roll? Because there were a bunch of bands there. Alice Cooper was playing.
Oh, wow.
No, it was pretty stacked, and that was also Capitol Center. Um, I've seen a bunch of them. I only just recently saw King Diamond, which that made me so happy.
Mhm.
I had to do that. I had seen Merciful Fate a number of times from their reunion, like from In the Shadows, and we did the first couple albums. We saw them for In the Shadows, we saw them for Time, and I think even Into the Unknown. Um, because they were playing regularly at that point. But I finally saw King Diamond a few years ago, and that was on my bucket list. Had to do it.
Absolutely.
Had to
Well,
do it.
thank you again, and please keep in touch. I'd love to talk metal with you more, my friend.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's any other stuff you want to talk about, band wise, music wise, I'm your guy.
All right. I appreciate it, my friend, and thank you again, and
Absolutely.
have an amazing night, my friend.
You do the same. You do the same. This has been a stone cold pleasure.
Cheers, my friend.